on the 3rd of July 2014, 3 days ago as I record this, I'd invested a lot of time in building a hexacopter which could record beautiful video. I'd learnt a lot along the way, not least from some pretty spectacular crashes. But I had basically mastered it, and things were looking pretty smooth. So on the way home from work, I headed up to Devil's Dyke and to this car park and this exact point. I started the camera, stood well back, and set off. Excuse the head-mounted camera, which has a very wide field of view, and very quickly the drone looks very small. I'm taking some nice circles in the sky. I want to have a look at what the video will look like if the camera's moving, or at least I wanted to. At the moment I don't think I'll ever see it. It's quite breezy, but the drone is responding to my commands exactly as I'd expect. Let's speed up as I arc round and head towards the northeast. At this point in the flight, I'm still able to bring the drone back nearer to me, having flown over my own head from the original starting position. But I am noticing that it's slightly harder to get the drone to climb, which happens as the battery wears in. Then, all of a sudden, the wind starts to have an effect, and you can see the drone drifting off to the left quickly. What's hard to make out here is the pipe insulation on the drone's landing struts is being blown loose. Here you can see in this zoomed up, slowed down footage that a piece of pipe insulation falls from the drone. As soon as this has happened, the craft seems to be entirely controlled by the wind. I start running towards the edge to make sure I have continued sight of the drone. The further it gets away, the harder it is to judge perspective. I also decide to turn off my controller. The NASA is meant to respond to the lack of signal by climbing 20 meters and then returning directly to the point of takeoff and descending. It doesn't. It continues to rotate roughly around its own axis and drift off in the direction the wind is carrying it. I have some power to control it in an up and down direction, but very little, especially since the batteries are now at the point where the drone only really wants to go down. Thanks to the direction of the wind and the direction I've flown to start with, there's now a hell of a lot more down.
Shit.
We'll speed it up here because, as you can see, it's drifting and skimming around the horizon, and it's only a couple of pixels on the screen. But here I am, watching the drone drift out of my control, spinning slowly. Again, you'll have to take my word for that because it is only a couple of pixels on the screen. And once again, you'll have to excuse my head wandering around. I'm going to zoom in occasionally so you can try and pick out a bit more detail. And now the final descent, or the final recorded descent, is about to take place. Here you can see the drone dipping. It's just about to go below the horizon. I look down, I look up, and the camera doesn't acquire it again. The background is just too detailed, so I can't quite see where it goes down from the recording. From memory, it seemed to go slightly towards the left of the middle of this shot, either into that field or into those huge trees. They're a lot bigger than they look when you start looking around the trees. I hopped in the car and raced straight around to the village on the other side to have a look at the field and back up to where I was. The field itself has tall, but not that tall, grain growing in it. But you wouldn't see something 3 meters away from you, and you can only walk down certain paths within the field. It's pretty big. Leading from the field, there are public footpaths into a pretty densely packed forest. With pretty tall trees. There are certainly areas where the foliage is pretty thick. A drone could be a metre away from me and I wouldn't see it here. And then there are other areas between the trees which are very steep and slippery. It's not at all obvious here, and climbing through is not easy at all. And some things have definitely been here before. Then again, it could be up in the trees. After several fruitless hours, I was very pleased to find a proper footpath and to work my way out of the forest. I will try again.